want to make sure that that I take advantage of at least three of you have done this before. So it's actually fun in a lot of ways. I thought it was helpful to get just to talk about some of these things. So what I thought we could do is we could start with just recognizing that the purpose of this is to have a discussion with each other that is helpful for faculty that are newer to mentoring and advising first-year students, recognizing that they're doing it from INTD 100 this year. All INTD 100s will be linked with a INTD 101 that will be taught in an asynchronous way. We're still figuring out the support for the faculty that are doing the advising and mentoring, but this is an opportunity for us to think of how we're developing our own faculty to have an expertise in one of the four categories that we evaluate them in. So I thought what would be helpful is if we just kind of go around the room, and if you could introduce yourself and the department that you're from, and include how long you've been at the college, and maybe share what your approach is to working with first-year students. Well, we'll start with Ayesha. You're to my right on the screen, so
okay.
We'll start with you.
I was trying to do the math in my head about how long I've been here. Okay. All right. So I'm Ayesha Shaikh. I'm in the Department of Psychological Sciences. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been here since 2003. So I think that's 17 years or something like that. So I've been doing this for a while. I've been mentoring for a while. I love mentoring. I wish I could do it more often, but we have a lot of majors, so I don't get to do it every year because we need to advise our own students as well. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Christina, since you're from the same,
same department.
We're all social scientists here.
Exactly.
Your problem.
Wow.
It's the best kind, right?
I've been with the college for 10 years, also in the Department of Psychological Sciences. And, like Ayesha, echoing that, I really enjoy the mentoring. I think I kind of see it as being an academic parent. Like, they have gotten through high school, they're going into a major, shift and change in their lives. And they kind of need a landing pad. They need someone who is going to give them advice, someone who's going to help mentor them, but also kind of, call them and say, this doesn't fly in college. These are the things you need to know. You need to be prepared. But I feel like we always become that touchstone that they can come back to us at any point, even once they're out of our classes as a 100, even after they've chosen a major and have a new advisor. Like, we were that first person that they can turn to. So I see it as a really critical role in helping them adjust to the Whittier community.
Thank you. Becky, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I've been here as long as Ayesha has. That was 17 years. Wow, that has gone by fast. I'm in sociology, and I have mentored several times, but I also teach, lower division courses, and I think that those are also similar kinds of experiences in general to teaching these lower division courses with the newbies. I think we have to have a particular orientation to that age group to teach them, and so I would love to talk about this. I will stop right there.
And last but not least, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, I was adding up. It's longer than the three of them combined.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm Mike McBride. I'm in the political science department. I've been here 51 years.
Wow.
And I've probably mentored well over 40 of those years. Like my three predecessors, I like doing it a lot. It's an exciting time for these young people coming in. They're making a big shift from high school to college. We can help them make that adjustment. They're all different. They all have great dreams, and they all have idiosyncrasies and things we have to try to figure out and help them take advantage of the good things and avoid the bad things. help them get started. I tend to look at the first year as a real exploratory year for them, when they get a chance to find out what they really are interested in, and then help direct them, help push them off to advisors that know more than I do in their field, or in some cases work with them in political science. It's exciting. I have 2 adult daughters, and I've gone through this with them from the parental side, but I've done it also as the faculty advisor, and it's rewarding to see them 3-4 years down the road and what they've accomplished, and think that maybe we've been a little bit of part of that and to help them along. So I'll stop with that and let you kind of direct where we go now.
Well, thank you all for giving us a little bit of context to let everyone know that you are seasoned veterans, right? You've been through the first year wars as they are. And I think one of the important things for us to at least consider is we're giving advice to our colleagues, right? Perhaps our lesser experienced colleagues. So some takeaways. What is important? What is important for faculty student engagement with regard to the first year students? And like, if you had to give advice, which that's the purpose of this, what type of advice do you want to impart on the newer faculty?
Do you want us to go in the same order we went before, or what's
Yeah, whatever, just go for it. Throw it out there.
Okay, well, I'll start with a little bit. I think Christina mentioned this a little bit. I think in a lot of ways we're in multiple roles with these students. We're mentoring them, we're their professor, we're their academic advisor, and I see those as kind of 3 distinct things. So being a mentor is not synonymous with being an academic advisor, and I think that's important to understand. So there's a reason that we talk about first year students, mentoring first year students. So that goes beyond actually just helping them pick their classes and figure out their academic path. It's about helping them adjust to being a successful human being in this context, in a college context. And so I think that involves a lot of things. It involves their well-being, right? So I find myself spending a lot more time with my first year students, talking to them about their lives, helping understand what the stresses and struggles are in their lives, and trying to give them the tools that they need to be successful students. Whether that's pointing them to another resource, or actually being there just as a listening ear to help them through the difficulties of transitioning to college. It's something I think we all take for granted. We've been doing it for so long that we kind of forget in some ways what it's like to actually launch and go out beyond our homes and beyond our kind of our high school and our, in our own communities. And so I think that's what I see as most important in terms of the lessons, is just thinking about the different roles that you're in, and thinking about the mentoring piece being sort of like a parent. You're sort of parenting them, you're sort of thinking about their whole self, not just thinking about them in one situation in your classroom, for example, and helping them make that transition and adjustment successfully, while at the same time also, as their professor, holding them to high academic standards and trying to help them be successful in your classroom, and then as an advisor, thinking about helping them plan and helping them develop a plan and develop interests and figure out what it is that they want to do and go beyond what they maybe came in thinking they were going to do. So kind of helping them kind of push those limits and stretch the limits of whatever understanding they've had of what college is supposed to be or what they're supposed to study here, and help them think about the possibilities, right, of what they might accomplish and what they might do as a student. So those are kind of the 3 roles. And I think that's probably, for me, that's the most important piece of advice, is thinking that you are serving in all 3 of those roles when you're mentoring students, not just in one of them.
Who's next?
I think, kind of going off of what Ayesha said, having the 3 distinct roles, but across all 3 roles, to me, especially with first generation students, is come talk to us. Do not suffer in silence. Don't do this alone. Like, I'm your person. I was telling them, I'm like, I'm mission control. I will know who I need to call and which department and where to go, and we'll get this problem solved. But if you suffer quietly and just disappear, I can't do that. That, they've come from high school where they were at the top of the food chain. where they really knew what to do. They knew how to work the system. They were comfortable. And now there's having to adjust to being uncomfortable possibly academically in the residence hall, or if they're commuting and trying to find, the right core group of people. Maybe they're struggling, in other areas, but knowing that you need to ask for help, that's not a weakness. And I think especially with the first generation students, this sense of being so overwhelmed of like, I should know what I'm doing. My whole family's counting on me. I can't screw this up. And then, in essence, screwing it up because they didn't ask for the help they needed. So I think that's my biggest takeaway of, let me teach you that it's okay. Let me teach you that you are going to fail. You're going to face plant a dozen times, and I'm here to help dust you off, point you in the right direction. And then you need to get up and keep going. So, I mean, kind of this complex cheerleader, mentor, advisor, professor, as Ayesha said, but bottom line, I'm your go-to person who will help. Please use me.
Hi. I guess I would go back to what I said before, which is, I think it's really important for mentors to meet our first year students where they are. And that means getting to know them, like as Ayesha and Christina have said, but, and building that into your lesson plans, building that into your office hours. So that's asking them about who they are, but also ask, kind of really honoring their knowledge, that they have knowledge to bring, that they have understanding that they can share, and they can teach you, and they can teach each other about things that are really interesting, actually, if you're able to frame them in a classroom situation. So I think one of the main things to remember is that at no point really for most of these students have they ever been given a chance to have intellectual agency in a school environment, in a classroom environment. They've been most of them have gone to public schools where the teachers are doing the best they can, but in a difficult situation with a lot of kids, and sometimes those teachers aren't so great either, and the school system and the curriculum is kind of dull, and they kind of check out, and haven't been given many choices and many options to choose from. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that right away. You don't have to make it a big deal, but be aware of that. And so when they might not raise their hand, when they don't want to speak, when they seem timid and quiet, it's not because they're don't know anything. It's that they've never been in an environment where they've really been encouraged to be active learners. And I think we need to be that place where they can feel nurtured in that kind of active learning, and then supported in that way. And I think and then respected for what they know. And I think that's tricky for professors to do, because we think we know everything, and we don't. And we have a lot to learn, especially from this newer generation, about a lot of things. So I would say that I think that helps set up an environment from the beginning where they realize that you respect them, and that's interesting for them, I think, to come from an authority figure, and especially a teacher in the classroom and a mentor. I think that sets the kind of ground level understanding that you're really there to listen to them.
It's nice to go last because I get to hear all these great ideas, and the easiest thing would be to say, just listen to what Ayesha and Christina and Becky have said, because I agree with all of that. But if I can expand on maybe some of it, one of the things I also try to do is help them feel at ease. Bouncing off what Becky just said, I am an authority figure, but I'm a human being too, and I do have my own eccentricities and foibles, and they'll learn soon that I'm technologically illiterate, and they know far more than I do, and I don't know any of their bands or any of their songs or things like that. So, try to let them know that I'm a human being too, who wants to get to know them, but I also want to try to put them at ease. They don't have to take all the college requirements the first semester. It's okay to feel a little bit homesick. I even talk about my own experience, because I was really homesick my first 3 or 4 weeks when I was at college. And, you know, it's okay to have some of those feelings. And it's okay to not know for sure what you're going to major in yet. And that, you know, half of them will probably change majors from what they think they're doing now. And again, I'm a good example. I was halfway through my college undergraduate before I ended up majoring in political science and stuff. So I try to help them feel that way. But then if they do have some of these issues and questions, yeah, we are the people that they can come to, that we care about them, that we respect them, that we want to hear from them, that we can't learn from them if they don't speak up, if they don't talk to us. And we do need to know where to send them if issues do come up. We need to know what CAS can provide. We need to know about psychological counseling services being available. We need to know what kind of activities are out there that they can engage in, because I think we all know that if they're doing at least one or two other activities, they can't study all the time. And in fact, some of the activities they might get involved with will teach them just as much as what they'll learn in the classroom. So anyway, those are some of the things. I'll stop with that. I've been rambling, but it's fun to expose them to this and get them involved and get them to participate. In my normative theory class, I tell people, look, if you don't talk to us, you're being selfish. If you don't let us know what your opinions are, because they have worth, and you might, you know, convince us about something. You might change our minds. We'll learn from you. And yeah, I'll stop.
Well,
can I just add
go ahead.
one more thing to follow up on Mike, and this is something Laura said last time, and it's really important for new professors or newer teachers to try to remember that your experience as a student is not these students' experience as students. We're a funny bunch, being professors and going through all of that kind of education with a certain kind of mindset. Not every student has the same experience that we had a million years ago in college. It's just not the same experience. So it's really important to try to get out of your head that that's your life and your experience, and try to think about how these folks are going through different experiences. That's all.
Great observation. So this is maybe a two-part question, because I think it'll be helpful, is to think about, or maybe to address this, like, what were your most successful and rewarding experiences when you were mentoring or working with first-year students? And then maybe you want to include some things to avoid, right? Some things that maybe you tried that didn't work, or you know, some things that you just, maybe they didn't work once, and when you tried it again, they worked. I'll give you all a chance to just kind of comment on those kind of 2 points.
I don't know. I think I've had my share of successes. I don't want to sound like I haven't had any successes, but I think the thing that stands out is sort of what not to do or things to avoid. So I'll start there. And, you know, I think that one of the mistakes I probably have made, you know, early on, and things that I would want to avoid is, especially when you're in the role of being their freshman writing instructor. So you're trying to teach them how to write. And at the same time, you're trying to be there to have a relationship with them and to be that person that they can go to. And so I think some difficulties that I've gotten into with some students, and it hasn't been with whole classes, but with some students, when they're not doing their work, or they're not doing their work in the ways that I have expectations for them in the classroom, that then impacts our relationship, right? And so I think they may feel that I'm less accessible if they've just gotten back a grade that they don't like, you know? And I think in particular, it's been difficult because, you know, as Becky pointed out, some of their experiences coming into college are varied, and they have varied levels of preparation, and they may come in in their English classes, and then they take my writing course, and the first grade is a D on a paper, right? And so I think we have to be really careful how we handle that and how we manage those relationships, because I don't think I did a good job initially setting them up for that and for receiving the feedback, and for them to understand that I was giving it to them because I thought that they could do better, not because I thought that they did shitty work, you know? So I think that was hard for me initially to understand. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not saying this to them, but I'm thinking to myself, well, I can see your scores, you know, I see your transcript, I see your SAT scores, you know, like I see the discrepancy there, like between your SAT scores and your grades. And I know that the SAT is not a perfect measure, right? So, but I also am seeing your writing in front of me, and this is not A-level writing, at least not in college, right? So they're sometimes coming in with expectations that they just deserve, you know, the grade without necessarily having to put in a different level of work. And so I think for me, that's been the challenge, is trying to communicate with them about that in a way that's going to still be inviting, to preserve a relationship, but at the same time, not just be handing out grades like candy, right? So maintaining the academic rigor, maintaining academic standards, but helping get them. And this is where I think that I failed initially, is that I wasn't mentoring too at the same time as I was doing that. And so I think that mentoring would be helping them understand what the expectations are in college a little bit more, helping them understand from the beginning that even if you were an A student, you may not be an A student the first time you try, you know, and that it's okay to fail, and reminding them about the fact that those early assignments are usually really low stakes, you know, that you could get a D on a first assignment and still end up with an A in the class, you know, and to recognize there's opportunities for growth. So I think my initial failures were about that, not really recognizing that I needed to communicate much more before I gave feedback, and kind of prepare them for the feedback, and make sure that my feedback was heard, not as a you're not worthy or you can't do this work, but as a, you know, I believe in you and I think that you can do more and I want to help you do that. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. And I think I've gotten better since the very first time I've taught this and I made that mistake. And so, you know, I think there's definitely ways that you can be successful in maintaining both, and maintaining the relationship and dealing with teaching what's a difficult course, I think, for many of our students coming in that writing course. So it is possible to do it, and I have had successes with it. And I think the sections that I've been most successful with have been because the group has formed a relationship, not just with me, but with each other. And that they're there to support each other. So you know, if I'm going to give advice about things I did well, it's that, you know, I had those additional meetings outside of class with them, allowed them to get to know each other in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom as people, and really just forge the relationship more. So even if I had a good relationship with students, I could give them a low grade and they could hear it and they could learn from it and they could thank me at the end for helping them become a better writer, right? And I learned better how to do that over time, but I think it's because I spend more time up front building the relationships and helping them understand the difference in expectations at the college level and the high school level, and frame it like that. Like, I'm here helping you get ready for the rest of your college experience. So I'm going to be a tough grader because I want you to be prepared for what that's going to be like in your other classes, but that's not setting you up to fail. Here are ways in which you're going to be able to be successful and learn from that failure, right? So to give them those tools. So I think that answers both parts of your question.
Thank you.
So I think mine, definitely going off what Ayesha said, helping them understand their expectations. But I think the most important thing that I face planted the hardest on was week of welcome. I went both directions. One time I was much too like, oh, okay, I know you're getting a lot of information. We'll just kind of take names and do this. Bombed. Because then when I started putting the expectations, like Ayesha said, of like, this is how I want to write, it's like, but I thought you were cool. I'm like, okay, that didn't work. Then I overcompensated the next year and I was like, oh, all right. I mean, I was like a Till of the Hunt. I was like, you need to be in here on time. Let's go. I scared the hell out of them. So I think very much going off what Ayesha said of helping them form, you know, kind of this academic family, this cohort. This is a group of students that I trust that also connects with me as their mentor, you know, in my multiple different roles. I think really, to me, getting that week of welcome balanced so that I'm setting up kind of all three roles, like Ayesha said. Here I am giving you some mentoring advice. Here's how we're doing this. Here's this time where we're all getting to know each other. But here, I told you needed to have this read for our next meeting. And look, this is the standard I'm setting. You need to meet it. And I have found I still err a little bit on a little side of tough love more than anything else, because I can always relax, but it's harder for me to go the other way. It's harder to like pull the reins in on and be like, okay, come on, because then they feel kind of betrayed. So I think really having a battle plan, like don't go into week of welcome and wing it. Like, I mean, if you're teaching it for the first time, there's some winging it involved, but at least come in with some plan that you then can adapt instead of like, hi, like, here we are, you know. I think that's where I feel like I set the tone. And I know that because they're getting bombarded with so much information week of welcome, when they go to their first day of classes, they know kind of what to expect from me. I'm not the unknown. So I'm going to be the safe square on the Monopoly board where they're not going to have a problem. You know, at least they know what's coming. So that would be my best advice to our first time instructors in freshman writing.
Thank you.
You know, for those of us who are more introverted and
Oops.
may not want to be around a lot of people all the time, and you know, it's painful to get to know people, especially hip, you know, savvy young people, and you're feeling like kind of a dorky nerd because your daughter is telling you that all the time. That that's hard when you're first meeting these people, these younger people, and you don't know their culture, and they know, you know, it's just, you know, you don't get the memes. Like I don't understand them. And so, you know, I think you have to just kind of just go with that. And if that's who you are, I mean, that's who I am. And just be honest, like in the ways that Mike was saying, just be honest that that's who you are. I think I've learned that I mean, I've always felt that way, but I think I've just become more comfortable in that, and that's who I am. And then it's fun for them because then they can laugh at me, and that's a way for them to bond with each other, is to make you the butt of their jokes. And it's fun, it's nice, it's a gentle joking. But I think that gets more seriously now. I mean, it really is about getting to know them outside of the classroom too. I think that's where I've had more success in bridging this gap, is just doing some fun things with them. And I mentioned this to Gil earlier, you know, we used to do this a lot more. We had really built-in structured events where, you know, like I would take them on multiple field trips in the semester. It was a lot of time. We were all over the place doing different things together outside of the classroom. You know, I guess we had money for it. I don't remember how it all worked, but I had a peer mentor too. Oh, so good. Just having that other adult who's not my age in the room, really helpful. And that helped with the bonding experience too, I think, which is like they could go to her for a lot of stuff that they might not feel comfortable talking with me about, but I would hear about it eventually in some level. At some point I would hear about the serious things that needed to be heard. But the experiences, sharing meaningful experiences together, they really want to get to know you. You may not think that, but they want to know you, and they want to hear about you, even though you may not want to share. I mean, or you may, I don't know. I tend to be more private, but you know, they kind of are curious about that. They want to get to know you and spend time with you. So that gets to the bonding that Ayesha was talking about, but that's a successful class. When you have the students connected to each other, then you've done a really good job, I would say. And that's where you also have to kind of get out of the way about of that and figure that's tricky. Like that takes time. Like that's where you could make a mess of it and get too involved. And then they're like, why is she still here? You know, so that's what I would say. The other thing that I'm working on more, and this goes back to what I said earlier, was really trying to work with the course in a way that allows them to shape the course, so that they're involved in making choices about what we learn and how, to some extent, how we learn. And so that means making your course flexible and movable in what you decide to teach. And I haven't done that enough. I would say I would like to do more of that. That's kind of that's a risk to take. I think, you know, you're not really, like, you've got something in place, but you're also willing to shape it, to shift it and move it as the students want to shift it. And I think that's been successful when I've been able to do that. I would like to do more of that. And I think that, again, helps meet them where they are.
Again, it's nice and not nice to be at the end, I guess.
You should go first next time.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm pretty open. I think people would say I'm an extrovert, and I know my students would say they probably know far more about my family, my daughters, and pets than they would ever care to know. But I think it is really important to get to know them and let them get to know you. Doesn't have to be that much, for sure. But one of the ways I can do that is to also read their essays very carefully. I mentioned this the other time we did this. It will help you get to know them, assuming that they actually wrote the essays and their parents didn't help too much and so on. But the idea is that to get to know some little bits about each of them, as Becky said earlier, they are all different. But if I've done my homework a little bit before we actually meet, you should be able to have files that will have the essays they wrote when they were applying for admission, check over their records and so on. Just have a little bit of knowledge about them when you start out. And I think that makes it easier to kind of bridge that initial gap that we have. So that's one advice. In terms of the high standards, one advice is terrible English, one piece of advice. In terms of the high standards, one of the things I do go over is the syllabus for the course, but not so much because I want them to know everything in the course as an example of what they need to be aware of, and that the syllabus does, in a way, set out some of the standards that we're going to have to meet. So, you need to know that ahead of time. Hopefully you've got your syllabi ready before the course starts. Also know where you can send them if some issues come up and so on. So those are some of the things I think will help you interact with them. And look for some of those little things that you can kind of pick up on and then talk to them about, maybe outside of class. This is maybe going in too much depth on a personal case, but I had a student who was really great in one of my classes. I could tell from the exams she wrote. It was her freshman year. She was working in the registrar's office. She never said a word in class. And I was at the registrar's office doing something, and I called her over and said, Melissa, I'll use her name, I'm really mad at you. Why? Scaring her. I said, well, you did all this great work and you never said anything. And I got from that to, what are you really interested in? Well, she was interested in Russian studies, except we don't have that here except for one course. And her parents were Russian, and her background was partly Russian. And we got to talking, and out of it, we developed a Whittier Scholars Program for her. We found enough courses that she could do a specialized major. She became the best student I've ever had in 50 years. She got a full ride for her master's at Oxford and is finishing her PhD at Berkeley, and just spent the last year in Russia teaching international relations, not teaching English. You never know what it can lead to. And so if you can pay attention to those little things, and then even in class, I try to start out talking about, how are things going? How are your other classes? Have you looked into some of the activities on campus? Becky mentioned peer mentor. Peer mentors are great. I hope we have them. I really hope we have them, because I've already lined mine up and I'm expecting to do it. But I don't know, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Those are some of the good things. Now, the worst thing I think I ever did, I had a problem with a student. She had done something I didn't think she should have done. I can't even remember what it was, but I said something to her about it, but I said something to her about it in front of another student. And that was really dumb. And she actually came and talked to me about it later. And she was right, and I was wrong. And you shouldn't do that. And then, the standard of how do we hold them to high standards and tell them they've had problems. If you're going to do that, you also need to have something that keeps their self-esteem. So you need to look for something positive if you are going to talk to them. But if you have something really serious to say to a student, you got to do it separately. You've got to have them maybe come into the office if it's really something that's not too good. But also you got to find a way to look for the positive in what they've done. Keep their self-esteem up so that you can maintain that decent relationship. Now, this one worked out okay. I introduced her to her husband. They've been married for, I don't know, about 35 years. He's been serving on the board of trustees. It worked out, but it was a really dumb mistake, and you can tell it's a dumb mistake because I've been 40 years and it still annoys me that I did it. I'll stop with that. Don't do that.
Deep regret for Professor McBride. Well, we've really hit on most of the things that we needed to talk about, but we can just go quickly around the room and kind of wrap this up, and just any last pieces of advice that you want to give to faculty that are new to doing this, anything at all. I think the good thing about all of this use of technology for the last 2 months has been, I do feel like we've discovered, or we've allowed ourselves to use technologies in ways that we weren't kind of accustomed to doing previously. Mm-hmm. So recording this for archival purposes and using it as a resource for future faculty and current faculty to use to think about how they do their work is really helpful. But any last little tidbits of advice as we go around? Let's start with Mike, because he can't ride on the wave.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's right. Go Mike. Go Mike.
I don't think you should go through every little detail of the curriculum and the liberal ed program, but I think you need to understand it and be able to explain it. I think some students will wonder, why am I doing this? Why do I have to take these classes? And I think you just have to be able to help them understand what a liberal arts education is all about. And at the same time, although it's more difficult in the STEM fields, help them understand that they have a lot of flexibility, that you can do double majors, that if you have a major and the lib ed requirements, that you've still got another 30 or 40 units to play with. You've got electives, you can explore, you can experiment. You need to think about not just your college education, but what are you going to do after you leave Whittier? And what might your hobbies be? Music, art, whatever. So just help them feel at ease that it's 4 years, or some cases 3.5, but they don't have to do everything right away. They've got a lot of flexibility, and that there is a logic to what we're trying to do here. And it does make sense if you can help them understand it and explain that to them. And it doesn't have to be the first day or the first week. We don't have that much time in orientation. But it is something you can talk a little bit about in class. You don't have to spend the entire class period talking about the material. I say that, and yet I'm always complaining I never have enough time in class. But I think you can use class for a variety of things, not just the material. I'll stop.
Becky, how about you?
Okay. Last thoughts. I think, not to put too much pressure on you, the faculty mentor, but, given that you're really the first faculty member that they will really develop, you hope, a meaningful relationship with at the college. It's a weighty responsibility, I think. I think we need to, appreciate that how we teach and what we teach and how we interact with these newbies is very meaningful to them and to whether or not they decide to stay. I think it's really important to keep that in mind, but also to know that it's a semester long. I mean, ideally, you're talking about a whole year, actually. If we could build in like a whole year of what we've been talking about in the curriculum committee, a whole year of orientation, right? A whole year of mentoring. And certainly you have the whole semester to do that with them. And to make learning exciting and engaging for them, to really help them see that it's fun to learn and it's fun to be a co-creator of knowledge with you and with their peers. It's fun to be involved in campus life. It's like trying to get them connected in those kinds of ways to each other and to the campus and to their learning, I think is a big responsibility. And of course, you're not the only one, because you're not the only class that they're taking, but I think it's important to keep that in mind.
If I can jump back in one thing, because I think it builds on what you just said. They will never be freer than what they will be these 4 years. They may have problems and issues and so on. That's right. But they'll have much more flexibility these 4 years than any other time in their life.
Yeah, that's so important. That's why go and do study abroad if there are still flights. Whatever. Okay, whatever. But in the other alternate universe we used to live in before that, yes, right? All these things that you could do. I totally agree.
Christina.
I think, kind of pivoting off what Becky said, we're going to need a lot of flexibility. We don't know to what degree will be face-to-face interaction, what will be online, what will be Zoom, So I think we're going to have to really focus on the connection more than anything else and making sure they feel safe and grounded. I mean, even if things have calmed down, their families are going to still have anxiety about them coming and their wellness and listening to the news that is on top of already a lot of anxiety of letting your, kid fly the nest, and the anxiety that they might have about staying healthy and well and finding, their community. So I guess my biggest thing would be just really form the connections, listen carefully, and be ready to adapt, to making sure that you're taking care of them and yourself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo what everybody else has said, and I'll kind of go back to where I started, which was those 3 roles, right? So I'll just quickly say, in terms of mentoring, I think the most important thing is to care and show them you care. And I think if you do that, you're not going to make mistakes, like that you're going to care about their well-being as a human being. You're going to do a good job there. I think with advising, probably the most important thing to know is that you want to create a space for them to explore, rather than creating a sort of a passive role for them. So I think making sure that you're asking questions rather than directing, because I think that they can very easily get into a role of just tell me what to do, right? And that they're not going to have the agency for their whole educational experience. So it can shape that. So at the same time, you have to balance that with, sometimes they just don't know, right? So you have to be knowledgeable. And I think Mike said this a few times. You have to be knowledgeable about the curriculum. Yeah. You have to also be knowledgeable about the resources on campus and all those things. And you're not going to know everything right away. I mean, it took me several years really to develop that knowledge. But what you can do is you can make sure that if you don't know something, you're honest with them and you say, I don't know the answer to that. Let me find out for you and I'll get back to you, right? And that you legitimately do follow up. That shows them, once again, you care, right? That you're actually doing what you need to do to help them get the answers to their questions. And then that final role of being a professor, I think I'll go back to something Becky said, because I think this is something I also need to do more, is to learn how to be flexible, but at the same time, still provide a coherent, organized structure for your class. That gives them a sense of safety, because they know what to expect. So laying out your expectations, having a very clear syllabus, and that's one thing students thank me for a lot. I'm super organized, but I have I have everything in my syllabus. It's very clear. But I also think that Becky's point is really important too, to allow for some flexibility to meet the needs of your particular students. So those are the 3 pieces, I guess, of advice I have for each of the 3 roles that I think that we're taking as we're being faculty mentors.
Flexibility is the word.
I was also, last thought I just occurred to me is for those who are coming into student athletes, I found the coaches to be wonderful resources. Because if I'm worried, like, okay, this student is really struggling, I may check in with the coach. How is this student doing? Can you help me here? And I have found that sometimes having both people that, because the coaches, they trust inherently, sometimes I think even more than initially they trust us. Mm-hmm. So that has been a good kind of relationship to keep, well-formed.
We coaches, thank you.
Well, this is great. I learned so much from participating, just listening to everybody's different approaches and kind of the subtle differences that everybody takes and how they care for our students. It's very similar, but very different. And I think that that's the important thing that we can all acknowledge, is that we are all different. We are all unique. We're not going to do things exactly the same, but the students are going to get a very valuable experience if they allow themselves to connect with the faculty, right? Connect with the faculty to learn not only about what the academic experience will be like, but what life will be like at Whittier College for 4 years, right? That's what we hope to impart upon them. We want to see them graduate in 4 years. We hope that the time and the energy that we're investing in them will cause them to stay and persist at the college, right? So those are the big goals that we have. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, and especially thank you to the three of you that are doing this for the second time. I really, really
Crossing
appreciate
our
it.
fingers, it's recording.
It's working this time. I can see.
Okay.
I have it.
We see the red dot.
I have my phone tethered to the Wi-Fi and everything. I'm recording twice, so everything should be good.
We'll get our bill later.